I'm Sailor Jerry, the dog trainer, and today I want to talk to you about why I don't really take my dog on walks. There are so many things that happen in environments when you're out on a walk with your dog. Your dog could be triggered by the dog behind the fence, it could be triggered by the mailman, it could not really like vehicles coming by, it could be enraged by bicycles, it could be scared of the dumpster on the side of the road. And I don't think that we're really aware a lot of times that that's the case. I think that we oftentimes accidentally treat dogs like accessories to our own life, and we just think that they should automatically know what a car is and that it passes really closely without hitting us, or that bicyclists just go by, that they're not going to like boop us or something. But we introduce children to the world that have an ability to speak our language, but we don't really introduce dogs to the world. We just ask them to kind of be in it. And then when they don't perform as expected, we get mad at them and then say that they're a bad dog, and it really doesn't make a lot of sense. If we just think critically about it, we're not really doing a very good job assimilating them to society. What we're doing is just, we have captives and then we just tote them around with us, or we don't and we leave them at home while we go out about our lives. As great as I am with my dog, as much as I include him in my life, he's at the mercy of me. He's captive to me. I think about that a lot. That's kind of weird. But this is the way that we live with dogs. So I have to think about, what does he really need? My dog doesn't need to go around walks in the neighborhood. I don't live in a place where I need to do that. Some people have to go outside and do walks because they live like in an apartment complex. That's how they need to also exercise their dogs. So I recognize that. But what I want to do today is give you a couple of options on what else you could do that may be more effective for your dog and for you, that doesn't involve going on these gridded walks around the block, okay? First thing that I think people could utilize, that's just basic stuff everyone already has, is you're feeding your dogs out of bowls. That shit's weird. Like it's a prince or something, or a princess, and you're like, yeah, you can, just like that. It's called scatter feeding. It's not really just me being lazy and throwing the food on the ground. Dogs live in an olfactory world. They do everything with their nose. We are the ones living, most of us, living in a visual world, okay? That they're not the same as us. They don't need their food to come out to them on a platter. Sometimes I feed them out of a bowl just because my schedule that day or whatever. There's a particular reason, but for the most part, I'm taking the opportunity to use his food as a way to enrich him and help him use senses that he was designed to use. You put stuff in a bowl and it's gone. I mean, it's like throwing money on a bed and burning it. Don't you want to spend it on something? The way that you start this is really simple. You're going to throw food away from your dog and cue it with, find it, and then wait for your dog to come back and look at you again and engage with you. This is also the first steps of teaching engagement. Find it. Good boy. Find it. You can do that with handfuls of kibble. If you feed raw, you can do that with muscle meat. I'm using freeze-dried raw. This is part of my dog's diet, and this is how I do scatter feeds, because when I use kibble, he's not as responsive to it. So even though I have built this stuff in and built his food drive, that's just a particular thing that I found out about my dog along the way. You might find that out about your dog too. What I don't want you to do is jump ship on day 2 when your dog isn't doing it as perfectly as he was just doing it. Most dogs have to have their food drive built and improved upon. I guess all you people out there with the labs and goldens, lucky ducks. This is just a simple step that you can do to start utilizing your time differently. We've been here for like 20 minutes already. And been scatter feeding and doing all of these things. He went swimming? A walk? What the A walk, please. Find it. I can already hear y'all now. Well, my dog doesn't accept food outside. Well, my dog... I'm so glad you brought that up. The reason that your dog is not accepting food outside could be what we just talked about. Their food drive isn't built in enough, and the outside is overwhelming their desire to take food. Okay, so that could be, right? Because this is a lot going on out here. I don't really feel like getting down on a steak right now. I'm going to tell you, think about it that way, right? But what's likely happening is something called over threshold, which basically just means I can't. The environment's too much. I cannot do this. When you start using food in training with your dog, you will begin to see that there are times that your dog will take food and there are times that it will not. And it becomes this fantastic indicator of whether an environment is too overwhelming. You're also going to hear people talk about the term flooding. It's kind of like exposure therapy. So let's say that I'm scared of germs and my therapist makes me go in and put my finger inside a toilet bowl. And the thought is that the exposure and me seeing that it's not scary or seeing that it's not making me sick in that particular example is going to somehow cure me. Okay, so I used to flood dogs to do stuff. It's not a practice that I would do today. I'm not going to say never, ever, ever, under any circumstances would you never do that, because I think that that's a little bit weird. But when people talk about dogs being over threshold and then, oh, well, I flood dogs and it's not a big deal, that's a red flag to me. Okay, it's not something that you flippantly just throw around. So again, this is a really great way to measure, is my dog under threshold? Can they accept food? Find it. If your dog is not doing this, is not accepting food, dial it back. Dial the environment back. Dial the distractions back. You're probably skipping steps somewhere. If you see that you are in an environment and your dog is doing this number or staring at something like this and can't, you need to make some distance. You need to make some distance, and it's possible you need to get the fuck out of there altogether, okay? My dog has been doing this a really long time. So we've worked up to where there can be people around and distractions around. That guy's spraying poison, so we're going to go ahead and leave right now. But he can accept food, find it, pay attention to me, work on things. He can also find things that he wants to do and chooses to do on his own. I just leave the drag line on him, and I always try to come here when there's not really people here, so he can have as much freedom as possible. If there are other dogs or people here, I've got my drag line on him. I can step on it or pick it up if I need to. But he also has, 10 feet of freedom versus just being on the end of a lead like this on a walk. If you have to do it, okay. But you have to find times where you're doing other stuff too. Nobody wants to live on the end of a 6-foot lead. Nobody wants to just live inside of their home. Nobody wants to just live inside their backyard. Okay, so think of places that you can go where this would be okay and you're still being safe and making sure that everyone around you feels safe as well. Good boy. Find it. Good job. Perfect.